Want to stay ahead of the Riftbound market? Track every card, every price right now at magicalmeta.inc/Riftbound. From every card to every deck and every meta you seek, find it all together at magicalmeta.inc. Game on, everybody, and welcome to another video. In this video, we're going to be discussing the current legends that are available in the Origin set and Proving Ground set, and kind of go over basically what I think might be overtaking the Houston Regional and kind of placing them where I think each legend is. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and get these two top of metas just out of the way. We do have Kaisa and Master Yi, which are the most represented decks in the format, but there are some other decks that I kind of wanted to highlight. So let's go ahead and just touch on these real quick. I do think that these are going to be very popular in the regional out in Houston. But of course, Kaisa being the top meta deck, kind of the format defining legend that's available in this game. And then we also have Master Yi. We have two different variants. We have one that's really good into the Kaisa matchup, and then one for basically that's really solid into everything else. But also the Aurora build is just also very good into everything else. It's just that it's more favorable, at least from my personal testing, versus the Kaisa matchup. So that's kind of where we have for the top of the meta. Another legend we're just going to go ahead and get out of the way is Garren. He does need more support. There is a color combination that is better, but I will say Garren does have some really good cards. It's just that in his specific leader ability or legend ability, there's not really a good payoff. It's just really weak, unfortunately. He does basically play an Aurora strategy, but there's other strategies that if you're playing an Aurora deck have better combinations, but in his color combo specifically there's just a better legend as well. We're gonna go ahead and put Sett into meta viable, and I haven't quite decided if left to right will determine if they are more top tier within that category. So maybe that'll change as I kind of talk myself through these different kinds of video, or throughout this video. But Sett is just one of those really meta viable legends that really kind of helps facilitates a really sticky body, can be very aggressive, can be very mid-range, and kind of just really go into that conquer play strategy, because that is what seems to be the most meta viable kind of format or kind of game plan for most of the legends. But having the ability to like recall your units back into base kind of really counters the Kaisa strategy of trying to just basically blow up your units that are on board. So having really sticky bodies makes him a very meta viable leader. And sorry, I keep going back and forth by saying legend and leader, but just know that I'm saying legend. I kind of come from a background of playing a bunch of different card games, so my terminology gets mixed and matched all the time. Since we're about halfway done with all the Proving Ground legends, we're going to go ahead and talk about Annie. I'm going to put Annie in meta viable as well, because she has a very powerful ability where at the end of your turn you get to ready 2 runes, and that just kind of plays into her playstyle. She's in a very aggressive style deck, and the ability to also just have answers on your opponent's turn every time, you get to really kind of play into the board, maximize your resources, and then still have spells to sling into basically counter any kind of strategy. And it's kind of like a different kind of Kaisa, except that you get the resources every turn at the end of your turn, so then that way you always have something to establish board and play units on, or spells on your opponent's turn. So I think that's why she's a very meta viable legend. And then finishing up our Proving Grounds, I'm going to put Lux under playable. Unfortunately, I do think she's playable, but she kind of has this unfortunate like deck synergy or building strategy where like you're playing very expensive bombs, but once you play bombs to do the card advantage of drawing, you're kind of like using all of your resources on that one turn, and then that's kind of the end of it. So you really need the champion unit, the order unit on board in order for her to kind of get some additional value to play multiple bombs per turn. But unfortunately, that's where she kind of like lacks. And it is a very playable legend. It's one that I really want to also be much better, but that's just kind of where I'm gonna put her. Now onto the more exciting legends, I think, because once we go past all the Proving Grounds and like the obvious stuff, we're gonna go ahead and talk about another legend that kind of matches the color combination of Lux. I really do think Viktor is a very viable strategy that is meta viable, to be exact, where you're able to put a bunch of pressure or units onto the board and kind of really swarm the board and really conquer into those battlefields as it's a conquer kind of playstyle or a meta, where Kaisa really doesn't really have that many answers to it, and then Master Yi can also be oversworn with those. So I do think that Viktor is a very viable leader in this game, or legend in this game, and it's just one of those, like, don't sleep on it. It's also a very more budget friendly in comparison to the other top meta decks, so I think that this could see a lot of meta share at the Houston Regional. Ahri is also another meta viable legend in this game. This is actually my personal favorite, and I think that if you build the deck in such a specific way, it can actually overtake the top meta decks. Unfortunately, you do sacrifice a little bit more of a wider game plan, but if you're planning on always consistently playing against the top decks, you can actually build this deck in a way to always overtake those legends, because the champion units that are available to this legend is very flexible and interchangeable for whatever matchup you have, and it's just a very reactive and responsive kind of deck in itself. So I really do think that this legend is very meta viable. If I had to pick and put it in the meta viable tier, it probably would be top tier. I haven't quite figured out if I, again, want to shuffle these around. Maybe at the end I'll decide where they kind of look or wherever they fall. But this is my current favorite legend in the deck. I am trying not to be too biased, but I think that this is definitely a very strong deck. It's just one of those things where every choice matters, and it's just really, really solid as it can hold its ground against a wide variety of decks. It's just unfortunate that its weakest matchup is Kai'Sa, but there are different builds to play around that legend as well. I'm gonna go ahead and show some rogue decks some love, but I'm gonna put Darius as my first rogue deck as a choice. Again, the baited hook strategy is a very powerful deck. Unfortunately though, because so many strategies are now playing anti-Aurora or gear hate, it kind of just falls to the wayside. Because it is a very viable strategy, but it's a very aggressive, but people are playing answers, and by proxy this unfortunately is it takes hits, because people are having answers specifically for Aurora E decks. So that means people are having answers as well for baited hook. So that's why unfortunately I'm going to put this legend into the rogue category. But he won't be alone for long. I'm actually going to also put Teemo in the rogue category. People are really trying to fine tune and tweak this strategy, and I think that this deck is very consistent enough to do so. I just wish that there was more hitting cards to help facilitate the strategy that it has to, but it is definitely one of those, I think, sleeper choices that can be viable. It's just more at rogue at best, in my opinion, just because it's not as consistent with the game strategy that it's trying to do. Another rogue strategy I want to talk about is Misfortune. Misfortune is basically an Aurora style deck that has a lot of disruptions that's available to basically kind of counter your opponents, or like build really like strong powerful boards and also disrupt your opponent from doing their game plan. Because especially if you're playing any kind of like sabotage or mind splitter, you can get that hand knowledge and proactively rip your opponent's answers to your board. But I think that because it's like an Aurora style deck, it again falls to the wayside because people are playing answers to those. But I think Misfortune is a really good strategy. People are really trying to build out to it, but I think at best is probably going to be rogue. Another rogue strategy I want to talk about is Yasou. Yasou is a really interesting deck or legend in this game because it plays into a very specific mechanic of being able to conquer and do a lot of movement. Unfortunately though, I think it just requires a little bit more higher skill ceiling, and if you don't really see all your combo pieces, you unfortunately also just fall short from being too consistent in the meta. I've seen some really interesting powerful Yasou decks, but because it's kind of more of a combo and it has the chaos and calm, you really just need to be more of a reactive deck with answers, but also facilitate a game plan. But I think a really good Yasou pilot can do really well, at least in the rogue category, but I think that's kind of where they fall until it gets more support. Now, not to say that it will be needs more support, because decks that fall into this category basically just kind of don't have that ability to kind of be a strategy on its own, or it's just kind of supplementing a different strategy. Yasou actually does have a game plan with alternative win conditions, and the Calm Legend ability to basically go into a battlefield and do 6 or might damage based off what it is can really be devastating and control the board. But that's why I just think it's a little bit more of a higher skill ceiling kind of deck, where at best it's kind of a rogue strategy. I'm gonna put Volibear into the playable category because unfortunately it's just like an Aurora style deck with some like anti or unit removal kind of actions, but I just don't think that it's gonna be rogue at best. It's really playable, but it's just kind of a Aurora strategy with like anti-unit answers. So there's something here, but it's just like it needs a little bit more support just to break into that rogue category, in my opinion. I'm actually going to put Leona into playable. I just think there needs to be a little bit more stun characters or stun units or stun abilities that needs to exist in this game in order for her to kind of have her moment. I think that we're just not quite there yet to kind of help facilitate the whole engine. There are some really good cards that do stun abilities, but we just need a little bit more. It's not in the needs more support because she can definitely hold her own, and there's definitely some kind of strategy and synergy there, but that's where I'm just going to go ahead and put her for the time being. But she's so close to being, in my opinion, rogue playable. For that reason as well, I'm actually going to go ahead and put Lee Sin in the playable category as well. It just doesn't quite make that rogue category for me because it is basically playing all of the Master Yi color combinations. But for the time being, it's just that it needs its own like deck identity, also to be much more, to break the mold of kind of facilitating that Legends ability to basically kind of have a bunch of the buffs, because I just unfortunately think that if you're playing a buff strategy, that Sett is just better, and if you're playing like a calm and body strategy, Master Yi just does it better. So that's why I'm going to put it under playable, but there are just maybe slightly better options that doesn't always even break it into the rogue category. It could be there, and I can really kind of see it, but for playability, I'm going to go ahead and just say that it's more playable than a rogue strategy. Jinx is also a very interesting choice to me, and I'm going to put it under playable because it's just almost there in the rogue category. I've seen some really strong Jinx Reanimator decks that kind of really digs into the aggressive style, but I think that it kind of runs out of too much gas to where it can be just something that's more consistently rogue than playable. And I would love to be proven wrong. I've seen some really powerful Jinx lists as well in different variations, but doing the whole like hand discarding yourself to kind of turn on the legend ability kind of feels a little awkward at sometimes. But really, it's just I think a good deck. But maybe if I had to reshuffle these around, I'll go ahead and do so right now. So after reshuffling, this is probably where I would line up on my list in between each category. Again, nothing really too much at the top has changed. Meta viable, I put Ahri to the top. A little bit of bias there. Maybe Viktor's a little bit better, but I think because you know, the deck has Foxfire, we're able to kind of just board wipe. Anyways, but I was in between like Viktor and Annie being swapped between the two. And then Jinx is so close, in my opinion, to break into the rogue category, just as Lee Sin is. So, and then I kind of put, I don't know if Lux, I think Leona might actually be right there. So like, that's kind of where I'm putting these legends at. So please let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, and let me know what you guys thought about this. I would love to really have a conversation with everybody to kind of give me some more insight and another opinion. But this is kind of where I'm maybe expecting the Houston regional and the Origins meta to kind of be for the time being. But again, I would love to know what you guys think about this. Let me know in the comments down below. If you guys enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like, comment, and subscribing. Check out my website for more Riftbound related information, and I'll see you guys in the next video. I'm out of here.